Disclaimer: this is a fictional dramatization created for artistic, emotional, and educational storytelling purposes. All characters and events are entirely fictional and created using AI tools. No impersonation, misrepresentation, or harm is intended. The content contains scenes of danger involving child characters. However, no real persons or minors were involved in its production. Grace's Love Stories produces scripted, AI-generated stories that promote, entertain, inspire kindness, and emotional connection. We respect our viewers and strictly adhere to YouTube's policies.
The air in the Alpha King's private study always felt different, heavier, even through the closed door. Tonight, it hummed with a tension that pressed against Maeve's ears, a low thrumming like distant thunder. Her own heart, usually a steady drum against her ribs, now hammered an erratic rhythm, each beat a frantic warning. She shouldn't be here, lingering in the shadowed corridor, a silent specter caught between the warm glow of the hall lanterns and the chilling whispers filtering through the ancient oak. The scent of Silas, rich earth, old parchment, and the subtle, dangerous tang of his alpha power was unmistakable, a magnetic pull that had once felt like home, now a sickening lure. But it was not his voice that had drawn her, nor his scent that had frozen her in place. It was Hannah's, her best friend. The soft melodic cadence, not carrying messages, not taking orders, but conversing, deciding, her tone laced with a confidence Maeve hadn't heard outside the most intimate strategic council. A wave of ice, sharp and sudden, pierced through the hollow of Maeve's chest, a premonition of ruin. The conversation had been going on for a long time, too long for a simple update, too intimate for a casual meeting. Maeve had been on her way to find Silas, a scroll of proposed trade routes clutched in her hand, the smooth aged parchment a familiar comfort against her palm. A small hopeful smile had played on her lips, anticipating the familiar ritual, him listening intently, his thumb tracing the lines on her palm as she explained the complexities, the silent understanding passing between them, a language only their bond spoke. That was how it had always been, the quiet symbiosis of their partnership, their shared reign, their interwoven lives, trust. It had been the cornerstone of their world, the unshakable truth, forged in battles and whispered promises beneath the full moon. But then Hannah's voice, clear as a mountain spring, yet laced with an unfamiliar authority, had sliced through the hushed silence of the corridor, freezing Maeve in her tracks. The northern borders require a heavier presence, Silas. The reports from the scouting patrols are too consistent to ignore. The Crimson Claw Pack isn't just testing our defenses. They're probing for weakness. Maeve's hand had tightened on the scroll, the parchment crinkling with a soft protest. Her breath hitched. Northern borders. That was her domain, her project, her strategic overview. For months she had pored over the maps, debated troop movements, assessed the shifting threat levels of rival packs. Silas always discussed it with her, sometimes for hours, dissecting every angle, valuing her meticulous analysis, her innate understanding of the terrain and the pack psychology. It was their shared responsibility, a thread woven deeply into the fabric of their bond. Then Silas's deep rumble, softer than usual, a resonance Maeve recognized as reserved for moments of profound thought or shared intimacy. And the implications for the Southern Alliance, Hannah? Drawing resources away from the harvest patrols now could destabilize the food supply, anger the elders. You know how critical the harvest season is for morale. We can't afford to think only of immediate comfort or short-term gains, Hannah had countered, her voice firm, resolute, betraying no hesitation. The Crimson Claw is growing bolder, Silas, a show of strength now, a decisive repositioning of our sentinels, could prevent open conflict later. Waiting will only make us look weak. The words themselves, the content of the discussion, were not the issue. The strategy was sound, logical, persuasive. What shattered Maeve, what sent a shard of ice through her very soul, was the tone, the ease, the shared authority. There was no deference in Hannah's voice, no subtle implication of relaying information or merely offering an opinion. It was a discussion between equals, two minds weaving together the intricate fabric of their pack's future, Maeve's future. Their future, a future she was clearly no longer central to. A cold dread, slow and venomous, began to coil in her stomach, tightening with each shared nuance, each agreement. She pressed her ear closer to the heavy door, the ancient wood cool against her temple, her breath catching in her throat, a ragged sound. Her wolf, usually a fierce protective presence, felt distant, a phantom limb. The primal urge to howl, to demand answers, was suffocated by a deeper, more insidious pain. "You're right," Silas had conceded, a sigh in his voice that was almost a caress. "But convincing the council, it will be a delicate dance. They fear change, especially when it disrupts the established order." "Let me speak with Elder Theron," Hannah offered, her voice brimming with quiet confidence. "He respects practical reasoning, not just tradition, and I can frame it in a way that appeals to his sense of legacy, his desire for long-term stability. He'll listen to me." Maeve stumbled back, her foot catching on the intricately woven rug, its familiar pattern blurring before her eyes. The scroll, its plans for a shared future now mocking her, slipped from her trembling fingers, unrolling silently on the polished stone floor. The rustle was barely audible, a mere whisper in the cavernous hall, but in the sudden, echoing silence that fell from behind the door, it sounded like a gunshot, tearing through the fragile illusion of her life. The voices stopped, a beat of suspended animation, agonizingly long. Then the heavy, deliberate click of the latch. Silas stood in the doorway, his broad frame filling the archway, blocking the warm light from the study. His dark eyes, usually warm and knowing when they met hers, held a flicker of something unreadable, a fleeting shadow of discomfort that quickly hardened into resolve. Beside him, Hannah emerged, her face pale, her gaze darting from Silas's impassive face to Maeve's stricken one, then to the crumpled scroll on the floor. Her usually vibrant blue eyes were wide with a guilt that needed no translation, a desperate appeal for understanding that Maeve was too numb to acknowledge. The air thrummed with unspoken accusations, thick and suffocating. Maeve's throat felt dry, constricted, as if a wolf's choke collar had been snapped around her windpipe. The scent of betrayal was not something she could identify by familiar notes of blood or fear, yet it saturated the very fibers of the ancient packhouse, clinging to her skin, seeping into her bones. It smelled like dust and forgotten promises. "Maeve," Silas said, his voice even, devoid of the soft intimacy she had grown accustomed to, the possessive rumble that once defined their connection. There was no surprise, no feigned ignorance, no attempt to smooth over the jagged edges of the moment. Only a quiet, resolute acknowledgement of what she had witnessed. Maeve couldn't speak. Her voice, usually so ready with questions, with laughter, with plans, with loving endearments for him, had deserted her. She merely pointed a trembling finger at the open door of the study, then at Hannah, then back at Silas, the gesture an indictment. Her chest ached with a pain far deeper than any physical wound, a violation of her very soul. Hannah shifted uncomfortably, her gaze fixed on the intricate pattern of the rug beneath Maeve's feet. "Maeve, I can explain. It's not what you think." "There's nothing to explain, Hannah," Silas interrupted, his voice cutting through the tension with a chilling precision that left no room for doubt or denial. His eyes finally met Maeve's, and in their depths, she saw not remorse, not regret, but a weary kind of resignation. A man who had made a difficult choice and was now prepared to live with its consequences. Maeve deserves the truth. And in that instant, the last fragile tendrils of hope, the desperate excuses she had tried to weave in her mind. "It's a misunderstanding. He's just seeking another opinion. It's purely political," unraveled completely, dissolving into dust. He wasn't going to lie. He wasn't going to deny. He was simply going to confirm the slow, agonizing death of their bond. "Come in," he said, stepping aside, a gesture of hollow courtesy, an invitation not into his sanctuary, but into her own destruction. Maeve followed, her legs feeling like lead, each step a testament to the weight of her crumbling world. Hannah trailed behind, a shadow of the vibrant woman Maeve had known, her usual luminescence dimmed by shame. The study, once a sanctuary of shared dreams, whispered intimacies, and quiet plans for their future, now felt like a sterile interrogation room, devoid of warmth, filled only with the cold, hard edges of reality. She picked up the scroll, its crumpled edges a testament to her shattered expectations, smoothing them with a hand that shook violently. Silas moved to his desk, settling into the large, leather-bound chair that was both his throne and his refuge. He didn't invite Maeve to sit, didn't offer her the comfort of a familiar touch, didn't even meet her gaze for more than a fleeting moment. He simply watched her, his expression unyielding, a silent sentinel to her suffering. Maeve Thangguan, he began again, his voice calm, rational, and utterly devoid of warmth, a clinical detachment that stung more than any anger. You heard what you heard. Hannah has proven to be an invaluable counsel. She offers a different perspective. A different perspective. The words were a knife twisting in her gut, carving out her heart. What about my perspective? What about our shared vision? What about the bond that made us one? She doesn't expect love from me, Silas continued, his gaze unwavering, as if he were delivering a strategic report to the council, not dismantling the very foundation of their life together. She listens without needing a place beside the throne, without the complications that arise from a mate bond. From our bond. The words struck her like physical blows, each one echoing with a chilling finality. Each one chipped away at the foundation of her world, reducing it to rubble. Complications. Was that what their fierce primal pull had become? A complication? The deep soul-shattering connection that had defined her existence for years, the sacred bond that marked them as fated, reduced to a mere inconvenience, a burden on his leadership. Hannah, beside her, let out a small, choked sob, her hands clutched together. Maeve, I never meant for you to be hurt. It just happened. Silas needed someone to talk to, someone without expectations, someone who could see things clearly, without emotional ties clouding their judgment. The utter raw honesty of their admissions was more devastating than any lie. There was no grand conspiracy, no illicit affair, no touch to condemn, no scent of another's desire on him, just a quiet, insidious erosion of trust, a gradual transfer of intimacy, a betrayal of the heart, not the body. It was a secret kept not out of malice, but out of convenience. Her expectations, her love, her bond, they were the burden. Her existence was the burden. Maeve finally found her voice, a broken whisper that seemed to tear at her vocal cords. You promised complete honesty, no secrets between us. You swore there would be nothing hidden. Silas's jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. And I am being honest now, Maeve. The truth, however painful, is that some matters are easier to discuss without the emotional weight of our bond, without the constant need to reassure, to protect feelings. Leadership requires pragmatism, a clear head. Sometimes love complicates that. Pragmatism, the word echoed in her mind, cold and sharp, a foreign entity in the language of their bond. It was a complete dismissal of their unique connection, of the sacred trust they had nurtured, of the very essence of their mating. It wasn't just a political choice. It was a profound, absolute rejection of her heart, her wolf, her very essence. The world tilted, the vibrant colors of the tapestries, the rich scent of the hearth, the comforting weight of the pack house around her. It all seemed to drain away, leaving a stark, monochrome reality. She was not just betrayed. She was replaced. Her bond, once a source of undeniable strength, now felt like a lead weight dragging her down, a chain binding her to a man who no longer wanted her emotional presence. She looked at Hannah, her former confidant, her laughter partner, her sister in all but blood. Hannah's eyes pleaded for understanding, but Maeve saw only the confirmation of her own obsolescence. The quiet transfer of trust had been happening for months, maybe longer, right under her nose. While she had blamed the crown, blamed coincidence, blamed everything but the two people she loved most. They had carved her out of her own life, piece by agonizing piece. A primal scream built in her chest, a raw, animalistic cry of pain and rejection, but she swallowed it, refusing to give them the satisfaction of her complete unraveling. She would not break here, not now, but the foundations of her world had crumbled, leaving her exposed, raw, and utterly alone, a hollow shell where a vibrant mate once stood. Without another word, without a backward glance, Maeve turned, the crumpled scroll still clutched in her hand, a useless relic. She walked past Hannah, ignoring the outstretched hand, ignoring the choked apology, the sound of her friend's tears. She walked past Silas, not meeting his gaze, fearing what she would see there. Pity, relief, the stark, cold indifference that would truly shatter her beyond repair. The door closed behind her with a soft click that resonated like the final nail in a coffin. The corridor was cold, shadowed, no longer a path to a shared future, but a desolate road to nowhere. The air, once thick with betrayal, now felt impossibly thin, stealing her breath. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't stay, couldn't breathe the same air, couldn't bear the crushing weight of their truth. The bond, once vibrant and pulsing with life, now felt like a phantom ache, a searing emptiness where warmth and belonging once resided. She had to escape, to run, to find some place where the echoes of their honesty wouldn't haunt her every step, where the ghost of their broken trust wouldn't choke her. She needed to disappear before the raw wound festered and consumed her entirely, before the pack could witness her slow, agonizing demise. Her wolf whimpered, a lost, sorrowful sound deep within her, desperate to flee, to shed the skin of this unbearable pain. The click of the door latch echoed, not just in the silent corridor, but in the deepest caverns of Maeve's soul. It was the sound of a final door slamming shut, sealing off her past, her future, her very identity as Alpha King Silas Moore's mate. The cold air of the hall, once a familiar transition from the warmth of their private chambers, now bit at her exposed skin, raising goosebumps that had nothing to do with the temperature. Her vision blurred, not with tears, for they refused to fall, but with a sudden, overwhelming sense of dissociation. She was a ghost, walking through a life that no longer belonged to her, her steps muffled, her presence unnoticed. Her feet carried her automatically, blindly, away from the Alpha King's study, away from the suffocating honesty of Silas's rejection. Each step was a leaden weight, dragging her further into the desolate labyrinth of the pack house. She passed familiar tapestries depicting ancient hunts, their vibrant colors now muted, drained of life. The scent of hearth smoke, usually a comforting embrace, now felt acrid, stinging her nostrils, reminding her of the warmth she'd been cast out from. The quiet hum of the pack, usually a symphony of belonging, was now a cacophony of distant, indifferent sounds. Laughter from the common hall, the murmur of guards, the soft pad of paws from shifting wolves in the courtyard. None of it touched her, none of it offered solace. She was an island, adrift in a sea of her own making, or rather, Silas's. Her wolf, a fierce, protective entity that had always mirrored her emotions, was a wounded animal deep within her. It whimpered, a raw, guttural sound that resonated with her own silent scream. It clawed at the inside of her consciousness, desperate to lash out, to rend and tear, to challenge the Alpha who had so carelessly broken their bond. But Maeve held it back, a tight, painful leash on its primal fury. She would not give Silas the satisfaction of seeing her utterly undone. She would not unleash the storm within, not here, not now, where her pain could be witnessed and worse, pitied. Complications, Silas had called their bond. Emotional weight. Pragmatism. The words echoed, a relentless, torturous litany in her mind. They were clinical, sterile terms, utterly devoid of the passion, the devotion, the love that had once been the very breath in her lungs. He had reduced their sacred mating, the fated connection that marked them as soul-bound, to a mere obstacle in his path to efficient leadership. And Hannah, her Hannah, had been the solution, the unburdened confidant, the one who listened without expectation, without needing a place beside the throne. The sting of Hannah's betrayal was a different kind of pain, a dull throb beneath the sharp agony of Silas's. It was the pain of a severed limb, the loss of a sister, a confidant who had chosen ambition, or perhaps perceived loyalty to the Alpha over the unwavering devotion of a friend. Maeve pushed through the ornate double doors leading to the deserted West Wing, a section of the pack house mostly used for storage or visiting dignitaries. Here, the air was colder, heavier, imbued with the scent of aged wood and forgotten memories. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to be far from the vibrant, breathing heart of the pack that had just rejected her. She needed the silence, the emptiness, to hold her unraveling. Her fingers went instinctively to the mark on her wrist, a faint swirling tattoo of intertwined wolf and moon that signified her mate bond to Silas. It usually pulsed with a subtle warmth, a constant reminder of his presence, his strength, his love. Now it felt cold, dead, a scar rather than a living connection. A dull ache resonated from it, a ghost pain that mirrored the hollow in her chest. Was this how a bond died? Not with a violent tear, but with a slow, agonizing suffocation. She found herself in a small, seldom-used courtyard, open to the night sky. The full moon, a luminous pearl in the indigo expanse, cast long, spectral shadows across the flagstones. Its silver light, usually a source of strength and comfort for her wolf, now felt accusatory, shining a spotlight on her humiliation. She sank onto a cold stone bench, drawing her knees to her chest, burying her face in her arms. The chill seeped into her bones, but it was a welcome sensation, a physical distraction from the inferno raging within. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. Time had ceased to hold meaning. The sounds of the pack house gradually receded, replaced by the rustle of leaves in the ancient oak that dominated the courtyard, and the distant mournful cry of a lone owl. She didn't cry. The tears were frozen somewhere deep inside, trapped by the sheer magnitude of the shock. She simply sat, a statue of despair, waiting for the reality to fully set in, for the numbness to give way to something she could grasp, something she could fight against. But there was nothing to fight. Not an enemy she could face, not a challenge she could overcome. This was a betrayal from within, a dismantling of trust by the very hands that had sworn to protect her. How could she mend something that had been so meticulously, so coldly taken apart? A shiver ran through her, not from the cold, but from a sudden, unsettling awareness, a scent. It wasn't the familiar, comforting musk of her pack. It was wilder, sharper, tinged with pine, and something darker, an ancient earthiness that prickled her senses. It was the scent of an outsider, a rogue, perhaps even a lone wolf from the distant, untamed territories. Her wolf, despite its injuries, stirred, a low growl rumbling in its chest. Danger. Maeve slowly lifted her head, her eyes scanning the shadowed corners of the courtyard. The moonlight played tricks, turning innocent shadows into lurking figures. Her heart, which had been a dead weight, now began to beat with a frantic, primal rhythm. Was someone watching her? Had her desperate flight from the pack house been observed? Then she saw it. A pair of eyes, burning with an almost feral intensity, glinting from the deeper shadows beneath the gnarled branches of the old oak. They were not the familiar amber of her pack, nor the cold blue of Hannah's, nor the dark, unyielding depths of Silas's. These eyes were a startling, vibrant green, like moss in a sun-dappled forest, alight with an intelligence that seemed ancient and untamed. They held hers with an unnerving stillness, a silent challenge that prickled her skin. Her wolf, suppressed for so long, surged forward, a wave of instinct washing over her. It wasn't just fear it felt. It was a complex mix of terror and an undeniable, forbidden curiosity. This was an alpha, she realized, a truly wild alpha, whose presence was a silent roar of power. His scent, now closer, was overwhelming. Not the refined scent of a pack leader confined to a throne room, but the raw, untamed essence of the wilderness itself. It spoke of deep forests, of hunting under blood moons, of solitude and fierce independence. It was dangerous, yes, but in her current state of utter brokenness, it was also captivating. A low, guttural growl rumbled from the shadows. It wasn't threatening, not exactly. It was more a sound of assessment, of inquiry, a question. Maeve, still frozen on the bench, found her voice, though it was barely a whisper. Who? Who are you? The figure shifted, slowly emerging from the deepest shadows. He was taller than Silas, broader across the shoulders, and his movements were fluid, predatory, like a creature of the night. His face was a landscape of sharp angles and planes, shadowed by a dark, untamed mane of hair. A jagged scar ran from his brow, down across his left eye, pulling at the corner of his mouth in a perpetual snarl. His gaze, those burning green eyes, never left hers. There was no pity in them, only an intense, almost predatory curiosity. A question I could ask you, little wolf. His voice was a low growl, rough as gravel, yet surprisingly melodious, carrying the deep resonance of the forest. You smell of the pack, yet you bleed of rejection. What draws a mate of the Alpha King to weep beneath the rogue's moon? Maeve flinched. The words were a direct hit, piercing the last vestiges of her defenses. He knew. He smelled her broken bond, her humiliation. The raw vulnerability of it made her want to flee, to howl, to collapse. But something in his gaze held her, a strange magnetism that was both terrifying and strangely compelling. He was danger, absolute and untamed, yet in her shattered state, the very concept of danger felt less terrifying than the cold, calculated betrayal of her heart. He was an unknown, a wild card in a game she had just lost entirely. And as he took another slow, deliberate step towards her, his eyes burning into hers, Maeve felt an inexplicable pull, a primal resonance deep within her wounded wolf that was both terrifying and utterly inescapable. This rogue, this stranger, had seen her at her lowest, and his presence promised either utter destruction or an entirely unforeseen path. The choice, she instinctively knew, was about to be made for her. The rogue Alpha's words, "You smell of the pack, yet you bleed of rejection. What draws a mate of the Alpha King to weep beneath the rogue's moon?" struck Maeve with the force of a physical blow. Her already fractured composure threatened to shatter completely. The shame, raw and burning, surged through her, painting her cheeks with a flush she prayed he couldn't see in the moonlit gloom. He didn't just see her pain, he smelled it, a primal truth laid bare before a stranger, before a predator. Her wolf, still reeling from Silas's dismissal, now bristled with a mix of defensive fury and a strange, almost intoxicating awareness. This Alpha was unlike any she had ever encountered, a creature carved from the very wilderness, whose senses were as sharp and unforgiving as his scarred gaze. Maeve pushed herself back against the cold stone bench, instinctively putting distance between herself and the encroaching shadow. Her breath hitched, catching somewhere between a gasp and a strangled cry. How dare you?" she managed, her voice trembling, far weaker than she intended. The defiant words felt hollow, lost in the vastness of the courtyard and the overwhelming presence of the stranger. He chuckled, a low rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate through the very earth beneath her. It was devoid of humor, more a sound of raw amusement at her feeble attempt at bravado. "Dare, little wolf, I merely speak the truth your bond screams. It's a symphony of a wound, a broken promise. The scent of a mate rejected is unmistakable, even to those who dwell beyond the gilded cages of your kind." He took another step, then another, until he was standing directly before her, his massive frame eclipsing the moonlight. His scent, now potent and all-encompassing, filled her lungs, pine needles, damp earth, the metallic tang of something wild and untamed, and beneath it all, a dark, primal power that made her wolf shiver, both in fear and in a forbidden, dangerous recognition. His green eyes, flecked with gold in the moonlight, scrutinized her, peeling back layers of composure she hadn't realized she still possessed. They weren't just observing, they were seeing, delving into the core of her being, past the hurt, past the shame, to the raw, untamed essence she usually kept hidden. "Gilded cages?" Maeve retorted, a spark of anger finally igniting within her. It felt good, a welcome antidote to the suffocating numbness. "What would you know of our ways, rogue? You who live outside the law, outside the protection of a pack?" A corner of his scarred mouth lifted in what might have been a sneer or perhaps a grim smile. The jagged scar, starkly visible now, gave his face a permanent cast of fierce intensity. "Protection, is that what your Alpha King offers, little mate? Protection that allows him to cast you aside for pragmatism?" He mimicked Silas's word with a sneering mockery that sent a fresh wave of humiliation through her. His knowing gaze swept over her, lingering on the cold, lifeless mark on her wrist. "No, I know true protection. It is earned, not given. It is fought for, not assumed, and it certainly isn't offered by a male who sacrifices his mate's heart for convenience." His words, though harsh, resonated with a brutal honesty that Maeve found herself incapable of refuting. He had seen through the polished facade, straight to the festering wound. Silas's dismissal had been a surgical strike, clean and precise. This Alpha's words were a bludgeon, crude and painful, but they held a raw truth that shook her. You heard?" she whispered, the shame deepening, he scoffed. I hear more than you think, little wolf. The wind carries whispers, the earth remembers footsteps, and the pain of a true bond shattering, that echoes across the territories. Your Alpha King made his choice, and you, it seems, are left to pick up the pieces. He extended a hand, large and calloused, scarred knuckles glinting in the moonlight. His fingers were long, powerful. Not to touch her, she realized, but to point to the crumpled scroll that lay forgotten at her feet. A stark white testament to her broken plans. What use are these scrolls now, little strategist? What use are your carefully laid plans when the very foundation of your world has been ripped away? Maeve looked down at the scroll, the proposed trade routes, the meticulous details she had pored over for weeks. They meant nothing, less than nothing. They were a symbol of a future that no longer existed. A shared dream that had been exposed as a cruel mirage. A fresh wave of despair washed over her, threatening to drown the fragile anger she had just found. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Her shoulders slumped, the weight of her betrayal crushing her. He knelt slowly, his movements fluid and silent, like a great wolf settling. His eyes, now closer, held an intensity that was unnerving. He picked up the scroll, his gaze sweeping over the contents. Then he looked up at her, a strange expression on his face. These are good plans, bold, resourceful, a mind like yours, wasted in the shadows of a complacent alpha. The unexpected compliment coming from such a formidable, dangerous source caught her off guard. It was the first time anyone had acknowledged her intellect, her strategic capabilities, outside of Silas's dismissive context of complications. A flicker of something, pride, stirred within her, quickly followed by suspicion. Why are you here? She asked, her voice regaining a fraction of its strength. What do you want? He leaned back on his heels, his gaze still fixed on hers. I sensed a disruption, a shift in the delicate balance of power. The scent of a powerful mate bond broken. It calls to the wild, and the wild answers. He paused, his eyes narrowing. You are not like the others in this pampered pack. There is a fire in you, a spirit that has been caged, not tamed. I see it, I smell it. And your wolf, it yearns for freedom, for retribution. Retribution, the word hung in the air, dark and tempting. Her wolf, deep inside, let out a low, hungry growl. It was a terrifying thought, a dangerous path. Yet the idea of simply fading away, of accepting her exile in silence, felt even more abhorrent now. What kind of retribution? She asked, her voice laced with a dangerous curiosity. He smirked, a flash of teeth in the moonlight. That, little wolf, depends on what you are willing to risk, what you are willing to become. Your Alpha King chose a path of pragmatism. He valued a compliant ear over the fierce heart of his mate. But the world outside these walls, it respects strength, not convenience. It bows to power, not politics. He stood again, towering over her, his shadow enveloping her. The air crackled with his untamed energy. You have been broken, yes, but a broken thing can be reforged. It can become something new, something sharper, something more dangerous than what came before. He took another step closer, his hand reaching out, not to touch her, but to tap the cold, dead mate mark on her wrist. The mere proximity of his skin, the powerful surge of his alpha essence, sent a jolt through her, a startling electric current that had nothing to do with pain and everything to do with a raw, primal awakening. This bond, he murmured, his voice a low growl that vibrated through her bones, is a cage, but it can also be a key to your own power. A key to your freedom. His green eyes burned into hers. A silent challenge, an unspoken question. The wild calls, Maeve. Will you answer, or will you remain a wounded bird, forever trapped in the gilded cage of a broken promise? The challenge hung in the air, heavy and inescapable. Her wolf, dormant and grieving for so long, stirred with a flicker of rebellious fire. It was a terrifying proposition, an unknown future, but the alternative, returning to the pack house, to the pitying glances, to the cold indifference of Silas, to the guilt-ridden eyes of Hannah, felt like a slow, agonizing death. This rogue alpha, this untamed force of nature, offered not comfort, but possibility. A dangerous, exhilarating, utterly terrifying possibility. His gaze, piercing and unwavering, seemed to demand an answer, not just from her, but from the very essence of her wolf. And in that moment, as the full moon cast its silver light upon their silent standoff, Maeve felt the first tremor of an impossible choice, a choice that would redefine her very existence, pulling her irrevocably towards the untamed whispers of the wild. The rogue alpha's challenge. The wild calls, Maeve. Will you answer, or will you remain a wounded bird, forever trapped in the gilded cage of a broken promise? Reverberated through her, shaking the very foundations of her being. Her wolf, which had been cowering in the shadows of her consciousness, now lifted its head, a low, inquisitive whine escaping its throat. It was a terrifying proposition, an unknown future fraught with danger and uncertainty. But the alternative, returning to the pack house, to the pitying glances, to the cold indifference of Silas, to the guilt-ridden eyes of Hannah, felt like a slow, agonizing death. This untamed force of nature offered not comfort, but possibility. A dangerous, exhilarating, utterly terrifying possibility. His gaze, piercing and unwavering, seemed to demand an answer, not just from her, but from the very essence of her wolf. And in that moment, as the full moon cast its silver light upon their silent standoff, Maeve felt the first tremor of an impossible choice, a choice that would redefine her very existence, pulling her irrevocably towards the untamed whispers of the wild. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken questions and the palpable weight of her decision. Maeve's gaze locked with his, those startling green eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of ancient forests. She searched for deceit, for manipulation, but found only a stark, brutal honesty. He wasn't trying to charm her. He was presenting a choice, a stark dichotomy between the suffocating cage of her past and the perilous freedom he embodied. The faint cold ache of her mate mark throbbed on her wrist, a constant reminder of the betrayal, a silent push towards the unknown. What would that even mean? Maeve finally whispered, her voice hoarse, barely audible above the rustle of the night wind. To answer the call of the wild, I am pack-bound. My destiny was chosen for me. It was Silas. The very mention of his name tasted like ash in her mouth. The rogue alpha's expression remained unreadable, his scarred face a mask of primal intensity. Your destiny was not chosen for you, little wolf. It was promised to you. And that promise was broken. A mate bond, when severed by betrayal, becomes a void, a vacuum, and the wild abhors a vacuum. It offers a different path, a path where strength is forged in solitude, where power is claimed, not inherited, where your wolf, currently bleeding in the shadows, can heal and reclaim its ferocity. He paused, stepping closer still, until she could feel the faint warmth radiating from his body, a heat that was foreign yet strangely compelling. His scent, a rich tapestry of pine, damp earth, and untamed beast, filled her senses, overriding the lingering stale scent of her own pack house, of Silas. It was raw, potent, an ancient perfume of pure, unadulterated power. It stirred something deep within her, a long-dormant instinct, a forbidden yearning for the untamed. The wild demands much, he continued, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. It demands resilience. It demands independence. It demands that you shed the skin of what you were and embrace what you could be. There is no comfort here, little wolf. Only truth. Only power. And the freedom that comes from being beholden to no one, especially not to a male who deems your love a complication. Maeve flinched at the repetition of Silas's cruel word. The truth of it, spoken by this outsider, was a fresh wound. She looked around the enclosed courtyard, the high walls of the pack house looming around them, a prison she had once considered home. The moon, now high in the sky, seemed to beckon, its silver light illuminating a path beyond the walls, beyond the familiar. Her gaze drifted to the rogue alpha's eyes again. There was no pity there, no false promises of rescue, only a fierce, unyielding expectation. He wasn't offering to save her. He was offering her the tools to save herself if she dared. And in that moment, something shifted within Maeve. The suffocating shame began to recede, replaced by a nascent spark of defiance. Why should she remain a victim? Why should she wither and die in the shadow of their betrayal? "What do I call you?" she asked, the question surprising even herself. It was a small step, a tentative reach into the unknown. He allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smirk to touch his scarred lips. "My name is Kyle, and you, Maeve of the Broken Bond, stand at a precipice. The choice is yours: stay and fester in the wound, or step into the shadow of the wild and be remade." Kyle. The name was as rough and elemental as the man himself. It carried the weight of ancient forests, of silent hunts, of solitary strength. Maeve looked at the cold, lifeless mark on her wrist, then back at Kyle's burning green eyes. Her decision, when it finally came, wasn't a sudden burst of courage, but a slow, agonizing realization that she had nothing left to lose. Everything she had cherished had been stripped away. The gilded cage had become an actual prison. I cannot go back," she whispered, the words tearing free from her chest. "I cannot face them. Not now, not ever." Her voice gained strength, a nascent resolve hardening her tone. Show me the wild, show me how to be remade." A flicker of something akin to approval, perhaps even satisfaction, crossed Kyle's face. He nodded slowly, his gaze holding hers in a silent pact. "Then listen, little wolf. The pack will hunt you. Silas will not allow his mate, broken or not, to simply vanish. Your disappearance will be seen as an affront, a challenge to his authority, especially if you are found with another." His eyes flickered down to her mate mark, then back up to hers. "You will be an outcast, a rogue yourself. There will be no turning back. Are you prepared for that?" Maeve swallowed hard. The implications were stark, terrifying. A rogue, hunted by her own pack, by the man she had loved, an enemy, but the alternative was unthinkable. "I am prepared," she said, the words firm, resolute. A cold, hard knot of determination settled in her stomach. If they wanted to hunt her, let them. She would not be an easy prey. Kyle's grim smile widened, a flash of white teeth. "Good. Then we have much to do. We move now. The scent of your sorrow has been too potent in this courtyard for too long. They will track it soon enough." He turned, his movements fluid and silent, melting into the deeper shadows of the courtyard. He didn't wait to see if she would follow, simply assumed she would. And Maeve, her heart hammering with a terrifying mix of fear and exhilaration, found herself rising from the bench, her legs, which had felt like lead, now infused with a strange nervous energy. She took a deep breath, inhaling the wild, untamed scent of Kyle, and followed him, stepping out of the gilded cage and into the unfolding shadow of the unknown. Her mate mark, usually a dull ache, now pulsed with a faint, almost imperceptible warmth, a strange, unsettling echo of the life she was leaving behind, and the dangerous new one she was about to embrace. The whispers of the wild were no longer whispers. They were a roaring invitation. And her wolf, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, stirred with a glimmer of untamed hope, a hunger for something beyond the familiar pain. Kyle's silent departure from the courtyard left Maeve with no choice but to follow. The decision, though made in a haze of pain and desperation, now felt startlingly clear. There was no turning back. Each step away from the pack house was a severance, a conscious act of rebellion against the life that had cast her aside. The air, once heavy with betrayal, now hummed with a different kind of tension, the raw, exhilarating fear of the unknown. Her wolf, still wounded but stirring with a nascent ferocity, responded to Kyle's untamed presence, a strange pull drawing her deeper into the moonlit wilderness. Kyle led her through a series of winding, overgrown paths, far from the well-trodden trails of the pack. His movements were effortless, a silent dance with the forest, his body a shadow within shadows. Maeve, despite her unfamiliarity with the truly wild terrain, found herself matching his pace, her senses heightened, her instincts sharpening with every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig. The scent of pine and damp earth intensified, mingling with Kyle's potent alpha musk, a primal symphony that overwhelmed her senses and began to reawaken something dormant within her own wolf. They moved for what felt like hours, deeper and deeper into the ancient forest that bordered the northern packlands. The familiar scent of her pack, of home, gradually faded, replaced by the crisp, clean tang of wild herbs, the earthy smell of untouched soil, and the distant, elusive scent of prey. Maeve felt herself shedding layers of her former self with every mile, the alpha's mate, the pack strategist, the woman defined by her bond. Here, under the vast, indifferent gaze of the moon, she was simply Maeve, a wolf on the run, a woman stripped bare. Kyle never spoke, but his presence was a constant, formidable force. He moved with an almost predatory grace, his head occasionally turning, his keen eyes scanning the darkness, listening to the subtle whispers of the night. He was a creature utterly at home in this untamed world, a stark contrast to the refined, controlled power of Silas. And in this wildness, Maeve found a strange sense of reprieve from her emotional torment. The immediate physical danger of being hunted, of surviving in this unknown wilderness, pushed the internal agony to a quieter corner of her mind. Finally, as the first hint of pre-dawn light began to paint the eastern sky in hues of deep violet and bruised purple, Kael halted. They stood on a ridge overlooking a vast, ancient valley shrouded in mist. A river snaked through the valley floor, its gentle murmur rising to them. The air was colder here, sharper, carrying the scent of distant mountains. "We rest here." Kael's voice was a low growl, rough with the exertion of the night. He gestured towards a cluster of ancient, gnarled trees, their branches twisted like arthritic fingers. "It is defensible, and our scent will be masked by the river." Maeve nodded, her lungs burning, her muscles aching in protest. She sank onto the roots of a giant oak, grateful for the momentary respite. The mate mark on her wrist, which had been a dull ache, now pulsed with a strange, almost electric tingle, a sensation that had nothing to do with Silas and everything to do with the raw energy radiating from Kael. It was unsettling, a confusing surge of primal awareness that she couldn't interpret. Kael moved with purpose, gathering dry branches, his powerful hands snapping them with ease. Soon a small, controlled fire crackled to life, its warmth a welcome comfort against the pre-dawn chill. The flickering flames cast dancing shadows on his scarred face, highlighting the rugged plains and the intensity of his green eyes. He sat opposite her, his gaze unwavering, studying her with an unnerving scrutiny. "They will send trackers," he finally said, his voice quiet, devoid of accusation, simply stating a fact. "Your scent is strong. Silas will not allow his mate to simply vanish. It is a challenge to his authority." "I know," Maeve replied, her voice hoarse. "I told you, I am prepared." But the words, though resolute, tasted like ash. Being prepared for a theoretical chase was different from facing the grim reality of being hunted by the pack she had once loved, by the man she had sworn her life to. Prepared is a sentiment, little wolf. Survival is an instinct. Kael's gaze was piercing. "You are weak. Your wolf is broken. You carry the scent of humiliation like a shroud. You will be easy prey if you do not shed it." His brutal honesty, though stinging, was a cold splash of water. It jolted her, stripping away any lingering self-pity. He wasn't wrong. She was weak, emotionally shattered. Her wolf had been silenced by grief. "What would you have me do?" she challenged, a flash of her old fire returning. "How does one shed humiliation? How does one heal a broken bond?" Kael leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "You stop grieving for what was lost, and you start fighting for what can be. Your bond to Silas may be broken, but your essence as a wolf, that is eternal. It is raw power. It has been suppressed, domesticated, but it still burns." He gestured to her wrist, to the cold mate mark. "That mark, it binds you to him still, even broken, but it can be changed. It can be claimed by you, not by a male, but by your own will." Maeve stared at him, her mind reeling. "Claimed by me? What do you mean?" "The mark is a symbol of a shared claim, a joining of two souls," Kael explained, his voice softer now, almost hypnotic. "But the energy that powers it, the primal force of the mate bond, is still within you. It is your wolf's fire. It can be redirected. It can be reforged. But it requires an act of will, a complete severing of the past, and a complete embrace of your own untamed nature." He reached out, his large, calloused thumb gently grazing the cold mark on her wrist. The touch was unexpected, a jolt of raw electricity that shot up her arm, making her gasp. It was not gentle or comforting, but intense, almost burning. His green eyes held hers, unwavering, as if he were looking directly into her soul, into the very core of her wolf. Your grief, your shame, they are chains, Maeve. They keep your wolf bound. To break them, you must confront the source of your pain. You must unleash the fury you have suppressed. The betrayal of a mate is the deepest wound, but it can also be the greatest catalyst. It can burn away the weakness and leave only strength. His thumb pressed slightly harder on the mate mark. A strange sensation began to bloom in her wrist, a prickling heat that spread slowly, deeply into her veins. It wasn't painful, not exactly, but it was profoundly unsettling, a disruption of the numbness she had clung to. Her wolf, deep within, let out a low, guttural growl, no longer wounded, but wary, intrigued, even responding. "Let the fire rise," Kyle murmured, his voice a low command, a primal resonance that bypassed her conscious mind and spoke directly to her wolf. "Let the anger consume the grief. Let the ashes of your past fuel the flames of your future. You are a wolf, Maeve, a powerful one. Stop clinging to the remnants of a broken bond. Claim your own power, now, before the hunt begins in earnest." His words, combined with the intense, almost magical sensation at her wrist, sent a tremor through her. The heat intensified, spreading from her mate mark, up her arm, into her chest, a burning tendril of energy. It felt like her very essence was being stirred, awakened. The betrayal, the humiliation, the profound loss, it all swirled within her, no longer a source of crippling pain, but a surging tide of raw, untamed fury. Her vision blurred, not with tears, but with the intensity of the emotion. Her wolf howled, a silent guttural roar from the depths of her soul, acknowledging the rage, embracing the fire. Kyle's gaze remained fixed on her, unwavering, as if he were coaxing the very essence of her being to rise. The mate mark on her wrist, cold and dead moments before, now pulsed with a searing heat, glowing with an impossible fiery light, twisting and morphing under his steady, silent command. It was as if something was being undone, and something entirely new was being forged in its place. The mate mark on Maeve's wrist, cold and dead moments before, now pulsed with a searing heat, glowing with an impossible fiery light, twisting and morphing under Kyle's steady, silent command. It was as if something was being undone, and something entirely new was being forged in its place. The sensation was overwhelming, a tempest of raw energy that clawed its way through her veins, bypassing her rational mind and speaking directly to her wolf. Her suppressed fury, the humiliation, the deep ache of betrayal, no longer felt like crippling burdens, but raw fuel, igniting an inferno within her. The light from her wrist pulsed, growing brighter, illuminating the shadowed hollow where they sat. Kyle's green eyes, reflecting the fiery glow, were alight with an ancient understanding, a fierce approval. He didn't flinch from the intensity of the transformation, but rather leaned into it, his own power a steady anchor against the tempest raging within her. The air around them crackled, charged with an invisible force. Maeve gasped, a sound torn from her throat, as the swirling symbol of her bond to Silas began to distort. The intertwined wolf and moon, once a symbol of unity, now writhed, stretching, then fracturing. She could feel it, a physical tearing, not of flesh, but of an invisible tether, a deep, energetic cord that had bound her to Silas. A sharp, almost painful surge of release ripped through her, followed by an exhilarating rush of pure, unadulterated freedom. The glow from her wrist intensified one last time, a blinding flash, and then slowly, gradually, began to recede. When her vision cleared, the mark was still there, but irrevocably changed. The intricate wolf and moon were gone, replaced by a solitary, stylized full moon, etched in a deep, almost luminous silver. It pulsed faintly, not with the cold, dead energy of betrayal, but with a quiet, powerful warmth, a resonance that felt entirely her own. It was no longer a claim by another, but a mark of her own sovereign wolf, reclaimed, reforged, untethered. Maeve stared at her wrist, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The cold emptiness in her chest had been replaced by a burning core of self-possession. Her wolf, no longer wounded and cowering, stood tall within her, its hackles raised, its gaze fierce and unwavering. The transformation was not just physical, it was soul-deep. She was not Silas's mate, broken and discarded. She was Maeve, a wolf unbound, a force unto herself. Kyle watched her, his expression a complex mix of intensity and satisfaction. "It is done," he murmured, his voice rough. "The tether is cut. You are your own alpha now, Maeve. Your power, your destiny, is yours to command." His words resonated with a profound truth. She felt it, a surge of power she hadn't known she possessed, a clarity of purpose that cut through the fog of her grief. The humiliation, the betrayal, they were still there, like scars on her soul, but they no longer crippled her. Instead, they felt like hard-won lessons, forging her into something stronger, something sharper. "My own alpha," she repeated, the words tasting foreign, yet exhilarating on her tongue. It was a concept so alien to her pack-bound existence, yet it felt inherently right. The wild, untamed essence of her wolf, long suppressed by the dictates of pack life and the expectations of a mate bond, now roared to life. Kyle rose to his feet, his gaze sweeping the valley, then returning to her. "This is but the first step. The pack will come. And now they will feel the shift. They will sense the severing of the bond, the awakening of your true power. It will infuriate Silas. It will confuse his trackers. And it will give us an advantage." "An advantage for what?" Maeve asked, her voice firm, no longer trembling. "For survival," Kael replied, his green eyes burning, "and for whatever justice you seek. You are no longer merely running, Maeve. You are reclaiming your spirit, your power, your place in this world. And if that means facing down the Alpha King who cast you aside, then so be it." A shiver of anticipation, not fear, ran through her. The thought of facing Silas, not as his rejected mate, but as an unbound wolf, ignited a fierce protective fire within her. He had called her a complication. He had dismissed her love as an emotional weight. He would learn the true weight of her unleashed power. Kael then began to instruct her. His teachings were not gentle, but brutally effective. He showed her how to read the subtle signs of the forest, how to mask her scent, how to move silently through the undergrowth. He taught her how to hunt. Not with the refined precision of pack hunters, but with the raw cunning of a lone wolf, relying on instinct and observation. He pushed her, physically and mentally, forcing her to confront her own perceived limitations. He made her run until her lungs burned, climb until her muscles screamed, and listen until her ears could discern the faintest flutter of a bat's wing from the rustle of a predator's paw. She learned to shift with a fluidity she hadn't known she possessed, her wolf form more powerful, more attuned to the wild than ever before. In her wolf form, under Kael's watchful eye, she felt an exhilarating freedom, a pure connection to her primal essence. Her coat was a rich dark auburn, her eyes a startling amber, reflecting the newly forged fire within. Days bled into nights, and nights into days. The pack's pursuit was relentless, but Kael's knowledge of the wild was absolute. They evaded every tracker, every patrol, slipping through the forest like ghosts. During their brief rests, Kael shared stories of the untamed territories, of ancient rogues who carved their own paths, of bonds forged not by fated claims, but by shared survival and mutual respect. He never offered pity, only challenges, urging her to find the strength within herself. As she healed, physically and emotionally, a new dynamic began to form between them. It wasn't the passionate, all-consuming bond she had shared with Silas. This was something different, something forged in shared danger and mutual understanding. His presence was a solid, unwavering anchor, and her trust in him grew, not out of naive devotion, but out of a deep respect for his strength and his unyielding commitment to her survival. His scent, once a marker of danger, now felt like a potent, protective embrace, a wild, earthy comfort. One evening, as they sat by a hidden spring, the moon casting dappled shadows through the trees, Kael turned to her, his green eyes softer than she had ever seen them. "The pack is close, Maeve, closer than before. Silas himself leads them. He is furious. He feels the severing. He feels your power. He will not rest until he finds you. Maeve felt a surge of adrenaline, a mixture of dread and a fierce, almost eager anticipation. Let him come, she said, her voice low and steady. He will not find the broken mate he cast aside. Kyle nodded, a ghost of a smile touching his scarred lips. No, he won't. He will find a wolf who has reclaimed her crown, but this will be a confrontation, Maeve. A battle of wills. You must be ready to face not just him, but his entire pack. Are you truly prepared to stand against them, alone, with only the wild at your back? Maeve looked at her wrist, at the glowing silver moon mark, a symbol of her newfound sovereignty. She thought of Silas's cold words, of Hannah's betrayal. The pain was still there, a dull throb, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, unyielding resolve. I am ready, she said, meeting Kyle's gaze, her own eyes burning with a newly ignited fire. I am ready to reclaim what was taken, and I am ready to show them the strength of a wolf truly unbound. Kale's eyes held hers, and in their depths, Maeve saw a silent promise, a shared understanding that transcended words. He would be there. Not as her alpha, not as her mate, but as the wild, unwavering force that had helped her rise from the ashes. The confrontation was inevitable, and for the first time in a long time, Maeve Kenton felt a surge of true power, a dangerous, exhilarating sense of purpose. The hunt was coming to an end, not with her capture, but with her defiant stand. I am ready, Maeve had declared, her voice firm, her eyes burning with a newly ignited fire. I am ready to reclaim what was taken, and I am ready to show them the strength of a wolf truly unbound. Kale's eyes had held hers, a silent promise passing between them, a shared understanding that transcended words. He would be there, not as her alpha, not as her mate, but as the wild, unwavering force that had helped her rise from the ashes. The confrontation was inevitable, and for the first time in a long time, Maeve Kenton felt a surge of true power, a dangerous, exhilarating sense of purpose. The hunt was coming to an end, not with her capture, but with her defiant stand. The morning air was thick with mist, clinging to the ancient trees and shrouding the forest floor in a veil of ethereal white. Maeve stood beside Kale on a rocky outcrop, overlooking a natural clearing where the trees thinned into a wide, open space. The scent hit her first, the familiar, overwhelming musk of her former pack, a wave of mingled scents that spoke of loyalty, of fear, of anger. And, at its heart, the potent, undeniable scent of Silas, laced with fury and a desperate, almost feral possessiveness. He was here. Kyle placed a large, reassuring hand on her shoulder, his touch a grounding force. They are here, he rumbled, his voice low, a primal warning. They sense your power, Maeve, the change in your mark. It drives them wild with confusion and aggression, especially him. He nodded toward the clearing below. Maeve took a deep breath, the scent of her past filling her lungs, but it no longer choked her. Instead, it fueled a cold, hard resolve. She felt her wolf surge forward, not in fear, but in anticipation. Her silver moon mark pulsed warmly on her wrist, a beacon of her autonomy. Down in the clearing, the pack emerged from the mist-shrouded trees. Silas led them, his massive wolf form a blur of dark fur and coiled muscle. His amber eyes, usually filled with a knowing warmth for her, now blazed with a terrifying rage. Behind him, Hannah, in her human form, looked pale and distraught, her gaze flickering nervously towards the ridge where Maeve stood. The rest of the pack, a formidable force of shifted wolves, snarled and growled, their hackles raised, their collective anger a tangible presence. Maeve shifted, her transformation fluid and powerful. Her auburn fur gleamed in the emerging sunlight, her amber eyes burning with a fierce, untamed light. She was not the same wolf Silas had known, the one he had dismissed as a complication. She was larger, leaner, imbued with the raw strength Kale had helped her uncover. Her howl, when it came, was not one of submission or fear, but a clear, resonant challenge that echoed through the valley, silencing the pack's snarls. Silas snarled back, a sound of pure fury. Maeve, you dare defy me? You dare flaunt your betrayal with this rogue? His gaze swept to Kale, who remained in his human form, a silent, imposing figure beside Maeve's wolf. The sight of them together seemed to ignite an even deeper rage in Silas. Maeve padded forward, her movements graceful and confident, placing herself slightly ahead of Kyle, a clear declaration of her leadership in this confrontation. Betrayal! Her voice, though coming from her wolf throat, was clear, resonant, imbued with a power that surprised even herself. You speak of betrayal, Silas? When it was you who severed our bond with your cold pragmatism? You who replaced my love with convenience? I did not betray you. You cast me out. Hannah, in the midst of the pack, gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Silas faltered for a moment, his wolf form tensing as if struck. The pack, too, seemed to hesitate, confused by Maeve's defiance, by the raw power in her voice. You have broken the sacred laws, Silas roared, regaining his composure. You have consorted with a rogue. You have tainted our bloodline. For this you will be punished. You will return to the pack, Maeve, and face justice. Maeve let out a low, guttural laugh, a sound of bitter amusement. Justice? Is that what you call it, Silas? Breaking a bond that was meant to be eternal, then blaming the discarded mate for seeking her own freedom? There is no justice here, only your wounded pride. She took another step, her amber eyes locking with his. And I will not return to a cage you so willingly built for me. I am unbound. I am free. And I will not be judged by a male who cannot understand the true meaning of loyalty. The pack shifted uneasily. The bold defiance of Maeve, the raw power emanating from her, was an unexpected challenge to Silas's absolute authority. They had always known her as the Alpha King's mate, a serene, intelligent force, but never like this. Never so fierce, so untamed. Silas let out another frustrated roar. Enough! This rogue has corrupted you. I will reclaim what is mine. He lunged forward, a blur of dark fur, aiming for Maeve's throat. But Maeve was no longer the unsuspecting mate. She moved with a speed and agility that shocked Silas. Sidestepping his charge with a practiced ease Cale had drilled into her, she snapped at his flank, a warning bite that drew a surprised yelp from the Alpha King. He spun, his eyes wide with disbelief and a renewed fury. You fight me? He snarled, clearly unaccustomed to such direct challenge. I fight for my freedom, Maeve retorted, her hackles raised. Their battle was a whirlwind of snarling fur and flashing teeth. Silas, accustomed to dominance, found himself facing an opponent who fought with a desperate, primal intensity. He was stronger, yes, but Maeve was faster, more agile, and fueled by a burning fire of indignation and self-preservation. She used the terrain to her advantage, ducking beneath his lunges, snapping at his exposed legs, never allowing him to gain the upper hand. The pack watched, paralyzed by the unprecedented spectacle of the former alpha mate challenging their alpha king. Hannah cried out, a sound of distress, caught between her loyalty to Silas and her shattered friendship with Maeve. Suddenly, Cale stepped forward, shifting in a silent, powerful surge of muscle and bone. His wolf form was immense, even larger than Silas's, a magnificent beast of dark, iron-gray fur, his green eyes glowing with an ancient, untamed power. He let out a deep, resonant growl that vibrated through the clearing, a sound that spoke of primeval forests and absolute dominance. It was a challenge not just to Silas, but to the entire pack. Silas, momentarily distracted by Cale's sudden appearance and overwhelming presence, faltered. Cale moved with a terrifying speed, placing himself between Maeve and Silas, not attacking, but declaring his presence, his protection. His very aura was a silent warning. "This is not your fight, rogue," Silas roared. His attention now divided, his rage warring with a sudden, dawning fear. "It is my fight when you threaten an unbound wolf," Kyle rumbled, his voice a low, terrifying growl. "She chose her path. She is no longer yours to claim. Her power is her own. And if you seek to chain her, you will face me." The pack shuddered, a collective wave of unease rippling through them. They sensed the raw, untamed power emanating from Kyle, a force far beyond the Alpha King's domesticated strength. This was a true alpha of the wild, a force of nature. Maeve, seeing the shift in dynamics, the fear in Silas's eyes, stepped forward, placing herself deliberately beside Kyle, her shoulder brushing his massive flank. The gesture was a powerful statement of alliance, a visual confirmation of their bond, whatever it was. Her silver moon mark glowed, a subtle, defiant pulse. "This is my choice, Silas," Maeve said, her voice clear, resolute, filled with a newfound authority that resonated with the very air. "I am not your mate. I am not your subject. I am not your complication. I am a wolf of the wild, and I choose my own path, and my path leads away from your gilded cage." Silas stared at her, then at Kael, his rage slowly giving way to a chilling realization. He had truly lost her, not just his mate, but the respect, the loyalty, the very essence of the woman he had so carelessly discarded. He let out a long, frustrated growl, a sound of defeat. "Go then, Maeve," he finally said, his voice laced with bitterness. "Go with your rogue, but know this. You are an outcast. You are no longer Pack. Your name will be stripped from our history. You will be forgotten." Maeve met his gaze, unflinching. Her heart ached, a residual pain, for the past that was now truly dead. But there was no fear, no regret. "I will not be forgotten, Silas," she countered, her voice ringing with certainty. "I will be free. And my name will be etched into the winds of the wild, a reminder that some bonds are not meant to be broken by others, but reforged by oneself." With a final, defiant look, Maeve turned. Kael, shifting back to human form with a fluid grace, placed a hand on her shoulder, a silent gesture of support. Together they walked away from the clearing, away from the stunned Pack, away from the defeated Alpha King, towards the deeper shadows of the forest, towards a future that was wild, uncertain, but entirely, gloriously their own. The unbroken thread was not a bond to another, but the untamed essence of her own spirit, finally free. The clearing had echoed with Maeve's defiant words, "I will not be forgotten, Silas. I will be free, and my name will be etched into the winds of the wild, a reminder that some bonds are not meant to be broken by others, but reforged by oneself." With Kael by her side, a silent, powerful anchor, she had turned her back on the gilded cage and stepped into the boundless embrace of the wild. The confrontation had been fierce, heartbreaking, yet ultimately liberating. The unbroken thread was not a bond to another, but the untamed essence of her own spirit, finally free. Months had bloomed and faded since that pivotal dawn, each one painting a new layer of resilience onto Maeve's soul. The raw wounds of betrayal had scarred over, not disappearing entirely, but hardening into the smooth, knowing wisdom of experience. She no longer carried the scent of humiliation. Instead, the crisp scent of pine, damp earth, and the exhilarating tang of her own untamed wolf clung to her, a testament to her rebirth. The forest, once an intimidating expanse, had become her sanctuary, her home, a living, breathing extension of her very being. She now moved through the ancient woodlands with the same effortless grace Kael possessed, her senses attuned to every whisper of the wind, every rustle of leaves, every distant call of a creature. Her auburn wolf form was stronger, faster, her amber eyes keen and bright, reflecting a fierce joy she had never known within the confines of the Pack. The silver moon mark on her wrist, once a cold reminder of a broken promise, now pulsed with a steady, warm light, a permanent emblem of her sovereignty, her wild heart, and her self-claimed power. It was no longer a symbol of being chosen, but of having chosen herself. Kael was always beside her, a steadfast presence. Their bond wasn't the faded, soul-crushing intensity of a mate mark, but something deeper, more profound, forged in shared survival, mutual respect, and the unspoken understanding of two untamed spirits. He had never sought to claim her, only to empower her. He had shown her the path to her own strength, walking beside her as an equal, a silent guardian, a fierce companion. His scent, a rich tapestry of wilderness and ancient power, now felt like home, a comforting anchor in the vastness of their shared freedom. The whispers from the former Pack lands sometimes reached them, carried on the wind. Silas's Pack had not fared well since Maeve's departure. His authority had been irrevocably shaken. The elders, once easily swayed, questioned his judgment more frequently. The loss of Maeve, not just as his mate, but as his strategic counsel, had left a gaping void in the Pack's leadership. He was a king without a queen, a leader whose carefully constructed image of unwavering strength had fractured. The pragmatic choices he had made had cost him more than he could have ever anticipated. Hannah, Maeve heard, still served him, but her spirit was broken, haunted by guilt, forever walking in the shadow of a friendship she had traded for a fleeting position of power. Maeve felt no triumph in their suffering, only a quiet, resolute understanding that some prices were simply too high to pay. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, Maeve and Kyle sat by a roaring fire near their hidden den. The air was cool, carrying the scent of wood smoke and the distant earthy aroma of the changing season. Maeve was curled against Kyle's side, her head resting on his broad shoulder, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat beneath her ear. His arm was wrapped loosely around her, his fingers occasionally tracing patterns on her arm, a silent language of comfort and connection. "The leaves are turning," Maeve murmured, her voice soft, content. "Soon, the first snows will come." Kyle's low rumble vibrated through her. "The wild prepares, so must we." She smiled, a genuine, radiant smile that reached her eyes. "We are ready, we are always ready." He chuckled, a deep, warm sound that brought a blush to her cheeks. He had taught her to find beauty in the harsh realities of survival, joy in the simplest moments. He had taught her that strength wasn't about dominance, but about resilience, about adaptation, about finding your true place in the world. He turned his head, his lips brushing her temple, sending a shiver of warmth through her. "You have truly come alive, little wolf." The fire that was caged, it now burns freely, brighter than any Alpha King's throne. Maeve looked up at him, her heart overflowing with a love that felt as wild and boundless as the forest around them. It wasn't a love born of faded expectations or societal dictates, but a love forged in adversity, earned through shared battles, and built on the bedrock of respect and profound understanding. Kyle saw her, truly saw her, not as an extension of himself, but as a complete, powerful being in her own right. He cherished her strength, celebrated her independence, and stood with her, not above her. "And you, Kyle," she whispered, tracing the jagged scar on his cheek with a gentle finger. "You showed me the way. You freed me from a cage I didn't even know I was in." His green eyes, usually so fierce, softened, reflecting the dancing flames. He leaned down, his gaze unwavering, full of an unspoken promise that spoke of forever. "You were never truly caged, Maeve. Only waiting for the right moment to spread your wings, or in your case, to reclaim your howl." He kissed her then, a slow, deep kiss that was full of the wildness of the forest, the warmth of the fire, and the profound, undeniable connection that pulsed between them. It wasn't a kiss of possession, but of shared spirit, a merging of two independent souls who had found their truest home in each other under the vast, untamed sky. As the moon rose, casting its silver light over their secluded haven, Maeve felt a complete, utter peace settle within her. She was no longer Maeve Kenton, the broken mate. She was Maeve, a wolf of the wild, sovereign and free, with an alpha by her side who understood the fierce, untamed beat of her heart. Their life might be unconventional, might exist outside the structured world of packs and traditions, but it was theirs. It was real, it was love, unbound and eternal, stretching out before them like the endless expanse of the wild itself.